from VIT Vellore at Nairo Research India. Devika Ma'am studies various aspects of the pathogenesis of endometriosis employing proteomics, genomics, and microarray data analysis techniques. She is also responsible for training undergraduate students in the basics of bioinformatics as a part of NIRA's industrial bioinformatics course. Her expertise lies in the field of molecular biology, bioinformatics, structure based drug design, and protein interactions. Now, I would like to welcome Ms. Devika Benoy, Technical Consultant, Sastra Innovation, to deliver today's speech on ritual screening using CISA.
Thank you so much, Kartika. And before I move on, I just want this question answered. So, may I please know who all are attending? Are these mostly MSc students? Are there other branches, other batches who are attending?
Yeah, faculties, research scholars, MSc students, all of them are there, ma'am. They are from chemistry, life sciences, biotechnology, biochemistry, microbiologists, all the divisions were here, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. I just
Okay.
wanted that so that I know what is relevant to share today. Let me just share
Yes, ma'am.
my screen.
Yes, ma'am.
So first, we are just going to start with how drug discovery process, where you started from. So I'm just going to go back to the basics. I believe yesterday you had sessions on all of this regarding, protein retrieval. So today I'm just going to touch upon all that very lightly so that we can go in a more, ordered manner. So this is where the two types of beginnings you can do when you are doing, virtual screening or drug discovery in any way. So first, either you find a gene of interest, you learn more about the gene and how it is involved in the disease, and you go on from there. Or if you haven't found a gene of interest yet and you want to find the gene, you study about the disease, you study the different factors that are involved, and then you go on from there, right? So right now we're going to start with how you go ahead if you know the gene. So this is the NCBI landing page, and over here, if you search for just GenBank, I believe some of you may be familiar with GenBank. If you search for GenBank, you will be taken to this directory, which is the nucleotide database. And it will give you basically the sequence of the gene that you are searching for, some other information also. So if I just enter whichever gene I want, for instance, right now I'm searching for Sonic Hedgehog. So this is the page that it will take me to. So Sonic Hedgehog, when I search, I have a lot of options here to filter it by. Maybe I'm doing this for a mouse study. Maybe I want to know if there are any analogs of this protein in bacteria for expression purposes, right? The purpose of my study may be very different. So according to that, you can use these filters to sort of narrow down your search. And there are many other criteria. If you go into detail, you'll be able to find out. But here you have the gene details. Either you can go for the GenBank flat file, you can get the FASTA representation. These are all just representations of the same file. And let me just go back. Yes. So if I clicked on the first link, this is where it would take me. This is the GenBank flat file for the Homo sapiens hedgehog gene. And this is the um, Sonic hedgehog gene, I believe. So as you go down, you will be able to see, which organism it is taken from, how it falls within the classification system, the journal article involved, all that. And so this is the gene sequence. You can also get the FASTA format. If you click here, you can get the FASTA format of the gene, and that basically looks like this. This is the FASTA format, and if you want to do other types of processes, for instance, you want to do a blast of the sequence, you can copy it from here and take it on. But right then, now you know the gene. But what we saw earlier, it just gave information about the gene, which organism it came from, the journal article it was associated with. We did not have concrete information to learn more about the gene. So either you can go to literature and read from there, or you can come to secondary databases like these. So what we saw earlier, NCBI is a primary database, as in whatever information is out there via literature or something, it is provided directly to the database. Whereas when you have a database like Gene Cards, it assimilates data from multiple sources and brings it to one place. So here is the symbol for Sonic Hedgehog. And when I look at it, this is my search for Sonic Hedgehog, right? I came to Gene Cards, search for my keyword Sonic Hedgehog. And if you look at it, you can see similar proteins. These are all, here you can see Indian hedgehog, and you can see parched desert hedgehog. So these are all similar sounding names, some of them. But if you see parched and or patched, smoothened, these are not similar sounding, but they appear in your result because they all are present in the same pathway. And as for the naming of the Sonic Hedgehog series, it's from this cartoon show called Sonic Hedgehog, I believe. And it's named, it's actually very funny because this hedgehog protein family, initially they found, I believe, desert hedgehog. And then after a few years, they found another hedgehog protein from the same family and they named it Indian hedgehog. These are two species of hedgehog. And finally, when they found yet another species or yet another form of this protein really in the same family, they call it Sonic Hedgehog after the cartoon. It's just interesting how, like if you see patched or smoothened or frizzled, these are all interesting names. And if you are interested in biology, it should incite some curiosity in you, right? So that is just one aspect of it. I'm sorry I digressed, but you can ideally, like if you are searching for a topic for a project or a topic for an assignment, if you find things interesting like this, it'll be easier for you to get an idea. Oh, maybe I can write about this protein, or which pathways it is involved in, or which diseases it is involved in. So moving on, if I am going to click on the Sonic Hedgehog link right here, it will take me to this page. So this is the gene cards page for this particular file, protein. And you can see there are a lot of sections. When we went to GenBank, we saw only one section where we saw, which um, family it was some. So that is a summary. So this is the Entrace gene summary. Entrace is the search engine for NCBI. Whatever we saw right here, that's what the search engine here is called. So yeah, going back, the gene summary, you can see how it is involved, which pathways it is involved, and basically which diseases it may cause if it is, unregulated. So this is a basic summary. But if you want to know more about the gene, you have the UniProt entry right here. And basically, if you click different things, so if I click on pathways, it will take me to the pathways that are involved. If I click on disorders, it will take me to the disorders that are closely associated with it. I suggest that you explore GenBank, gene cards as a database. It will be very useful to you. And then after, so let me just take you to one more area of this document. Hmm. Yeah. So if you want to know the interacting partners for this particular protein, this is where you can come to. It is within the pathway section itself. So it will give you the string interaction network. So this is a Sonic Hedgehog protein right here, and you can see which other proteins are involved with it. Now, if you go to string, you can see a more elaborate version, but this is just a direct link over there. Now, moving on, after doing this or before, we can ideally go to KEGG pathways. KEGG is again a primary database where data is, uh, given in, fed in directly. So this is a KEGG landing page, and you can go to KEGG pathway. This is what KEGG pathway looks like. The prefix for humans is HSA, so I'm just going to go with that. HSP, okay? And I'm going to type in Sonic Hedgehog, and let's just see what it gives us. Now, this is a thumbnail image of this pathway that Sonic Hedgehog is involved in. Let's just look at that for now. So SHH is right here, and you can see that it is a ligand. This is a membrane, okay? And this is a membrane protein that is patched one. This is smoothened. So this is the hedgehog signaling pathway. If you want to read more about any of these, you can just click on these links, and basically you can see how it is involved in the hedgehog pathway, how that directly connects to the TGF signaling pathway or the Wnt signaling pathway. These are all involved in tumorific responses, like tumorigenic, as in they may lead to tumors, or oncogenic, they may lead to cancers. So these are, as in they show cell proliferation and they promote increased survival. That means they reduce apoptosis. These are all things that can lead to, uh, cancer cells or tumor cells. So if you want to know what these arrows mean, you can see that some of these arrows have, different circles or different types of lines attached to them. So to get more information, you can just click on the help menu, and it will basically tell you what each of these representations mean. Now, moving along, let's just go to the other side. So here we already knew about the gene. I knew what gene I wanted to study, and that's where I went from, right? But often when we start research, we don't know where to start. Like if you want to study a disease, you don't know which gene to go for, which type of the disease, which phenotype of the disease. So here, DisGeneT is somewhere you can search for diseases, and you will get a lot of information associated with it. So if I go to the search bar and I just search, like click on the options, this is what I'll get. Okay. I can search, they'll give you some examples, or if you want, you can just enter your diseases on your own. If you want, you can enter gene names or variants. Right now, I'm just going to go for diseases, and within disease, here I've chosen Alzheimer's disease. Okay. So as you go below, you can see the options available. Summary of gene disease association, variant disease associations, as in maybe comorbidities. When you get one disease, there is a higher chance you can contract another one also. Stuff like that, right? So here I am just gonna click on summary of gene disease associations, because that's what I want to know. I want to know which genes are associated with Alzheimer's. So once I click on that, I'll be able to see this section. So on the far left, you can see the gene symbol. The UniProt ID is given right next to it, and the full name of the gene. This is the amyloid beta precursor protein. So you can see that right here. And for references, you can see, go to these links and find, how it is involved. And as you go down, you'll be able to see more proteins that are involved. If you see BAX and all, these are commonly present in cancer signaling pathways, BAX, BCL2, and yeah, stuff like that. You'll be able to know once you are used to it. Once you explore a few diseases, you will be able to know common factors, you will be able to know specific ones. For instance, for Alzheimer's, amyloid beta is actually very specific and is very important, whereas if you consider something like angiotensin convertase, that is basically involved in, hypertension, all those, it's associated everywhere. Or even if you just consider the COVID infection, you know how this is significant, right? So that is why you can learn about your disease, and you can choose a gene name to continue. And if you want to know how that gene, consider that, like from my previous disease search, I decided to go for sonic hedgehog again, and I can come to string, enter my organism, and go for a search, and this is what it will give me. So this is how it is related to other proteins. All these different colored lines, they have different meanings. You can read about them in the legend and see. So some of them are experimental, some of them are from just text. So some are more reliable, some are not more reliable. You will have to choose where you want to go. And over here, you can choose which interactions you want to see, and the confidence level, how many interactions in total you want to see. So there's a lot of options here. Okay. You can even input your list of genes and see if there are any interactions between those genes. So string is yet another useful database for connecting your proteins with other proteins. And then finally, of course, you have UniProt again. Like gene cards had information about the of the gene, UniProt has a lot of assimilated information about the protein. Now, when you come to UniProt, I want you to look at this notation right here. So over here, the golden color and the star, it actually represents that this has been manually annotated. Some of these entries down below, they don't have manual annotation. They have been automatically annotated by the software. So UniProt was, you had Tremble, and then the UniProt database, right? Swissprot and Tremble. So Swissprot had annotated genes, and UniProt had uh, Swissprot had manually annotated genes, and Tremble had automatically annotated genes. So manually annotated genes is ideally what you should look for, because an expert has reviewed the details that are given there. So I can go for this entry, and I believe some of you or most of you will already be familiar. So again, there's a lot of information that you can receive from here about your protein as well, the interactions it may have, the structure of the protein, the domains, the sequence. So you have a list of what you can choose from right here, and I suggest that you go there. Yeah, so this is a protein sequence. I can get the FASTA format from here and move on, right? And so now I know the protein sequence, but how do I know which protein structure to go for? Because many protein sequences or many protein structures may be provided for the same protein sequence, right? So for finding that, I will go to BLAST, and within BLAST, I will choose protein BLAST. So this is the protein BLAST landing page, and here I'm just gonna enter my protein sequence. So I've entered my protein sequence. So when the important part is, if you want to search within the PDB, in the database part, you should click uh, PDB. Okay, not non-redundant sequences, PDB, because that's where you're trying to find your result. And you can just do BLAST P, and it will give you similar proteins within the PDB, and out of which you can find which one you want to choose. And for choosing them, you can depend on the score. Higher score is the best. Query cover, the more query cover it has, the better. Also, the query cover matters because sometimes you may get 100% query cover. Maybe the protein information that you gave, only one domain of it or one, two, three chains of it may be important, even if it has multiple chains, right? So the ones that are sequenced in the for the structure, you may only get some domains or some chains for it, and that is why the query cover is given here. Now, according to which parts you want, you can choose. For instance, this is the graphic summary. You can see this is my query length. My protein length that I gave from UniProt is right here, but you can see how most of these are sequenced to a shorter region. Maybe they're just sequencing one specific chain. Yeah, so this is all information that you will need beforehand before you continue. And you can see the e-value, the lowest the better. Identity means, the same amino acid is present in the same position in both the proteins, and highest identity would be better. So you can go for whichever you feel is best for you. Maybe I can go for the first. If I don't feel that is right, I can go for the second, and so on. So apart from that, you can go to graphic summary, you can go to multiple alignment, MSA viewer, distance of tree results. If you're doing some evolutionary study with proteins, this is a very useful tool to use. um, BLAST is very underutilized, I feel, and like a lot of databases I just showed you today. Now again, PDB, very simple, you know what it is. You come here, you type your protein name or your ID, and you get the result, right? But how do you choose which protein to go ahead with? Ideally, it should have no mutations. If you, according to your study, if you want, for a regular study, no mutations is preferred. But if you want to go for something where, you want a specific mutation to be present, then search for a structure with that particular mutation. And when it comes to resolution, R value, and all, resolutions should ideally be somewhere around 2.5 angstrom or lesser than that. 3 is not bad, but it can be better, right? And the R value, if it is 2.5, the R value should be around 0.25 or less. So here the resolution is 3 and the R value is way lesser than that. So that is a good way to go. And if you look in the picture, so this black, completely bold black ones are of the protein, the current X-ray structure, and the other lines, these other bars that that are sort of hollow, these are for similar proteins submitted to the PDB. And what you should always notice is that the solid bars, they should be ahead of these hollow bars, because there are better structures out there. That's what it means. And it should be more towards the blue and than the red end. So by looking at this and these data, I know that this is not the ideal structure, but maybe I can go ahead with from my study. Not, there are multiple criteria, and you can see here the number of unique chains, the atom count, the weight. Now, if you're going for a molecular dynamics study or something like that, the weight of the structure, the molecular weight is very important because that will determine how long it is going to take you to get that simulation run, right? And next, if you want to know information about the binding site, etc., you should always read this article right here. Not a lot of people read it, but instead of searching everywhere for a binding site in literature, you can just come here, download this article, and read it. And so all this information is useful, right? Like you have information about your ligands that are attached to it. You can find a lot of other data. But another part that I want to show you is this one. So basically, you can click on this sequence option here, and it will show you the binding regions. Let me just see if I have it here. No, no. Yeah. So this is what that page will take you to, and you can see uh, binding sites. So this is a binding site that you have, and you can see which amino acid is present in that position. So that is for calcium. This is for zinc, and sometimes you may be able to see substrate binding sites and all that here. So that is one thing you can do on the PDB that, again, it's not very much seen, but you can easily come and get a lot of information from here. But apart from that, maybe you want to get more information about the structure from the protein regarding the sites, then you can always use the Casp-B server. The Casp-B server, this is what it looks like. It can give you the pocket IDs. Like for instance, I can see multiple pockets here. If I want to know where my binding site is and all, I can just click on the structures and give different colors. Okay, update. So now I can see different pockets, and if I go down, I can see which amino acids come in which pocket. So the first pocket ID, you can see which amino acids are involved. The second, you can see which are involved. Third, and so on. Okay. So if you know that your protein has the binding here in a certain pocket, you can see more information about that here. And again, the area, volume, solvent accessible surface area, solvent accessible surface volume can be present there. And if you want to know active site here, again, see there's information about your active site. There's information about sequence variants. Sometimes you may find information about substrate binding sites, etc. So these are all online databases and servers that you can use for your drug discovery approaches. But right now, let us just look at this presentation here. So from the current slide. Okay, so coming to computer-aided drug design, some of these aspects may have been covered by Dr. Girinnath yesterday, but I just want to focus on certain points. So today we will be looking at molecular docking as well as virtual screening. So in the software, I can show you how you can do both, okay? And again, these are the questions to be answered. What is the catalytic function? What are the active site? What is the binding site? Is that an allosteric site? Cleft detection. That is what I showed you on Casp-B server. Now we saw different colored pockets, right? So that is basically cleft detection. Then geometrical analysis, it resisted the bioactive conformation, flexibility. This again relates to, sometimes when you do molecular dynamic studies, because of the flexibility of certain regions, the protein may move around, and maybe interactions that you saw in molecular docking may not be there in molecular dynamics. And interactions that you sometimes will not see in molecular docking may be present in molecular dynamics. So these are all aspects of the protein that you should consider before going ahead. And in CISA, we'll also see some conservation study part today. Now, this is the binding energy, how it can be calculated. And what I want you to notice is that apart from the protein and ligand interactions, these water molecule interactions with the ligand or with the protein, these also contribute to changes, and ultimately these also decide what your interaction by energy or your binding energy will look like. Okay. And yeah, so let's just look at this virtual screening diagram again. So here you can see how different kinds of scoring and different parameters have been used for virtual screening. So first they had around 4.5 million molecules, which they initially screened using the docking score. The docking score basically tells you how your protein sits within the binding pocket, right? If it will fit or not. And then after that, to know how good the interaction is between the protein and your ligand, that's what we're going to look at next. Then you have so for that you have the affinity or the binding energy scoring. So you will know if your ligand has good binding energy with your protein. And after that you have torsions. Is a certain orientation acceptable, that you can check. And then you can check for hydrogen bond interactions, because the better the interactions, or maybe covalent bond interactions, so more the interactions, the more stable the binding. And that is one way you can narrow down. And finally you can do biological assays. So we can't focus on the biological assay aspect today, but we can focus on all the others. Now moving on. So this is tailoring the ligand. This is how you can edit your ligand in multiple ways. You can cut off the middle portion of the ligand, maybe the scaffold or the core of the ligand, and you can replace it. You can merge multiple fragments together and make it one single ligand. Like 2 or 3 fragments you want to make it a single ligand, you can do this. And finally, if your ligand fits into the pocket but not as well, maybe there is room for improvement, then you can go for growing function. We'll be looking at all that today. And this is the basic science behind it, right? You have your molecule, you tell the software where you want to cut it and what you want to replace. And the software will come up with all the possible combinations and permutations of fragments that can fit within that space and be accommodated into the binding pocket. Like if you find a fragment, like if you find a new type of ligand, but it is not fitting into the binding pocket, then that's not useful to you, right? So that is the use of the software, the algorithm. And this is just an example of how that happens. So you select which region to cut, and the software will give you many different options. Out of these, you can see earlier you had two rings here. Here you have only one ring. The next one you have three rings, and then the other one you have two rings. So different types of fragments can be found. Then coming to CSAR, this is what everyone has been waiting for, I understand. So in CSAR, the docking process is very fast, and the visual aids are what will help you understand the structure-activity relationship of each atom of the ligand. And you will be observing that closely today. So before that, I just want you to be familiarized with these terms. So first you have the hydrogen bond interactions. The green lines are hydrogen bonds that have good geometry. So when you consider proteins, you should always think of them as a solvated system. Okay. In your body, each protein is not present without water. Water is always around there. But when you do molecular docking, sometimes you don't use that water and you may miss out interactions. And another aspect you have to consider is when it is present in water, it is constantly in motion. Okay, so this is a snapshot where you can see some protein residues, and you can see this ligand is green and beige color. That is the ligand, and this is one snapshot, but this is constantly wiggling about, right? Let me just show you that. No, I'll show you that later. Or if you just search for molecular dynamic simulation result, you will be able to see a protein that is constantly just moving and wiggling around like a worm. Okay. So in one of those positions where it is wiggling or in motion, this white color bond that which has incompatible geometry at the moment, maybe then it will have, better geometry, and maybe that will form then. So these are all the plausible hydrogen bonds that can form. Then you have hydrocoronas. coronas. So this is unfortunate naming again was named before the pandemic, but a corona is basically a sphere, and that is what you see here. So this is an oxygen atom. Around it, you have a green corona. So if this corona were red, it would mean that the binding was bad. It is not good for affinity. This atom, this oxygen, is not good for affinity. But right now, it is green. That means it is good for affinity. And so if you look at both these carbons, one of them has a bigger corona and the other one has a smaller corona, right? So that means the one with the smaller contributes lesser towards binding, and the one with the bigger corona contributes more towards binding. So the size is indicative of the contribution of that atom towards binding. Now, next you have torsions. So this was done by first doing a statistical analysis of the Cambridge structure database, and the torsions that were commonly found, they were given the color green, not so common, orange, and red was the rarest. So acceptable torsions for most molecules. You have green as the acceptable, orange as suboptimal, and red as uh, not optimal. Like don't go for red. So if you want to make edits to your molecule to improve the feasibility and all, this is where somewhere you can make edits. Next, you have clashes. So no matter how good the binding is, if you have clashes that will affect your interaction energy, you don't want that happening. So CISA lets you visualize clashes as well. So this red arrow thing that you see here, that is how a clash is represented. And finally, ligand within the binding pocket. So this is just one application of CSAR apart from the docking. So first you have your biomolecule, you have your ligand here and your protein biomolecule around it, right? And this is just two different representations of the binding pocket. Here you can see what type of atoms. Here you can see an oxygen red and nitrogen blue. That's the only difference. Same pocket, same ligand. Now, I'm going to show you something called unoccupied space. So this fog that you see here on the right image, that is the unoccupied space. That is a free space within the binding pocket where you can grow your molecule, or where if you fit a molecule that can occupy that space, it may have better binding. Okay, think of it this way. Close your hand, like you have the hand, right? You have your fingers, you have your palm, close it into a fist, okay? And there's empty space within your fist, right? So if you put a small marble in there or a small stone, and you shake your hand about, your fist about, you will be able to notice that the marble is moving around. There's space for us to move around, right? And in the same place, if you take a small lemon and close your fist around it, the lemon won't move around. It is fixed in that place. So that is how you can imagine binding interactions. If you have a smaller molecule, there is more room for it to move around, so the interaction may not be that strong. Whereas if you have a bigger molecule like the lemon, it binds very closely, the bond is stronger basically. So that is what you can do. That is why unoccupied space is important. And here, the on the left side, that is just a representation of the binding pocket. What you saw right here is a representation of that. Don't get it confused with this fog. These look like clouds on the left, and on the right, it looks like a fog. Now, within the binding pocket, the first picture, there is no fog. In the second picture, I've turned on the fog function. So you can see at the bottom, at the top, behind this ring, on the side, how there are there is space that can be explored. There is space where you can fit more things into, so that that you can get better binding. So how are we going to do that? We will have to either move the ligand in within the pocket, that means getting different poses, right? Docking poses, or you can edit your molecule to make it bigger. So this is basically room for improvement that you can see right here. This bottom part is what I'm going to choose, and this is the ligand molecule, and I'm going to edit it multiple times to see which one of these versions can fit into the binding pocket better. And I noticed that, now if you look at the bottom, the gray fog that you saw earlier, it has reduced, and considerably the fog around the molecule has also reduced a lot. So that is one function that you could, like one action operation that you can perform in CSAR. And these are the different modes in CSAR. First, you have the protein modes for protein. You have protein mode where you can sort of upload your protein molecule. Then you have your binding site where you can choose your binding site, protein editor where you can edit different parts of your protein. Then you have your analyzer mode where you can analyze protein and ligand interactions. You have molecular editor where you can edit your molecule. Then Inspirator is similar to the RealCore algorithm where you can tell the software where you want to edit your molecule, and the software will come up with a lot of options for that particular query. And finally, you have docking. So in the next slide, I'll just explain these in detail apart from the docking one. So just read that for maybe a minute and we can go into the software. Okay. So if you open CISA, this is the page you will be brought to. But when you open it, you must have received an email yesterday containing the license file. It will first ask you for a license file. It will request a license file, and once you have downloaded, you just have to upload it here, and you will get this option. So here you can see the version and all that, and you can either, if you have already used the software, then you can continue with an old file, or you can start a new project. Or but if you are starting out, I suggest that you take the CSAR tour. It will tell you what the important functions are, what is where, etc. Now I'm just going to go with a new project. So yeah, this is the workstation. You can see the sequence view right here. Top, you can see the data, and this is your where you can visualize. Right now, there are two options I have. Either I can uh, upload a protein structure that I already have. It can be a homology model structure or a PDB structure. So if I have my own extra crystallography structure, I can upload that also. But right now, we're just gonna go with a PDB structure. I already have structures here, but I'm just going to show you how you can directly import from PDB without having the structure. So, sorry, just 1DWD. When I type it, I get an option. Click it. Now, all the protein pre-processing that happens, like adding hydrogens, whatnot. So that is taken care of by the software. You do not have to do any of it. And one thing that is special about CSAR is here, you don't delete the water molecules. Earlier, I showed you in my slides that, the water molecules also contribute to interactions. So certain specific water molecules are retained so that you can have more accurate interactions. So either you can choose to extract your ligand, and if you choose to extract your ligand here, then your binding pocket will be sort of defined according to the ligand that you have chosen. For instance, in this picture, just a moment, if I choose, this as my ligand, then the binding pocket will be defined according to this region. So it will be somewhere around here. If I choose this as my ligand, it will be defined somewhere over here. So the software will automatically do that for you if you choose your ligand. But if you do not choose your ligand, if you do not extract a ligand, we can see what happens. Okay. So I'm not extracting ligand. I'm just going to click on apply. And now no binding site has been chosen. You have to choose, like, you have two options. You can either tell the software to find the binding pockets, or you can choose it on your own. So let me just show you what is here at the bottom. Here you can see the proteins. If I had multiple proteins here, I could see it here. So you can see the whole protein is highlighted. Here you have the residue. So individual amino acid residues will get highlighted when I go through here. Then next you have ligands. So you can see the different ligands that are highlighted. If I extract a ligand, then you won't be able to see this. But since I did not extract, they are still present within the structure, so you can see this. And then if there were any metal ions, I would be able to see them here, but there are none. And then the important water molecules, let me just show them. So these are the water molecules, okay? And according to where I define the binding site, the software will choose water molecules that are relevant to that region. And then you have the different chains of the molecule. If you want to hide a certain chain, you can hide it or visualize it. So all this can be done. Now let's just go to binding site and define my binding site. So either I can, choose. So from literature, if I know that the serine is involved, I can say add to binding site. Then leucine is add to binding site. Then I'm going to add this arginine to binding site. So you can see in the picture that they are getting highlighted. Like you can see small clouds around it. So yeah, that is something you can do. Whichever residues you feel like are contributing to the binding site, you can come and add it. But if I, after some time I realize, okay, maybe these residues are not present in the binding site, what I can do is, okay, this variant may be not present. So what I'll do is I'll just click on it and choose remove residue from binding site. So the valine will be removed. You can see that is gone. Yeah. And if I want to remove the serine also, click on it. Remove from binding site. So the serine is also gone. But instead of doing this, I can choose confirm selection and go. 5 residues have been chosen, confirm and go. But instead of doing that, that's another option you can use. So I'm going to reset. So you see this pocket function here. So this is basically for showing or hiding unoccupied pockets. I'm just going to click here. Now the software will detect unoccupied pockets for you. So over here you can see different colored fogs, different colored pockets. Uh, so looking at my structure, if I want to say, my binding pocket is here, I can click on this one. Okay, I've clicked on it and I'm going to confirm the selection as a binding site. So before I do that, I have a lot of parameters I can use to judge it. Dog site score, this is a score for scoring binding sites. So acceptors, donors, lots of options. You can go with whatever you want, but right now I'm just gonna go here, click on this button. So now this is defined as my binding site. Binding site is defined. The binding site contains 19 residues and is ready to use in all other modes. So that is something I can do. But so now you can see how you can automatically set the binding site, right? By yourself. Sorry, not automatically, by yourself. And if I feel, after defining this also, I feel some residues are missing or some other residues have been added. For instance, I see, okay, this has been added, but I want to remove it. What I can do is I can come here and say remove residue from binding site. So that arginine has been removed from the binding site. So blue means it has been predicted by the software, but if you saw that pink dot, that means it is currently present. Okay. Now blue means it is already, again, even though it is predicted, I have removed it, so it is not currently present in the binding site. So that is what you can infer from here. Right now, I'm just going to go back and start from scratch again. So I showed you how you can define a binding site, but now what if I want to just go with, whatever binding site can be predicted according to the ligand. So I'm just going to click on 1DWD, and now that protein will be loaded. As you can see, the hydrogen bond network has already been added. It is calculating the binding affinity, the protein ligands, all of them have been imported. You don't have to do anything by yourself. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this molecule as my ligand. I'm going to click on extract ligand. So my ligand has been extracted and this is the binding pocket that has been chosen. So if I click on show binding site only, I can see the residues that are only involved in the binding site. And yeah, like this green chain and this red chain, when I click on binding site only, they are hidden, okay? Because the binding site is not present in that chain, in those chains, it's only present in the blue chain. Next, so we load the protein, define the binding site. If I want, I can go to binding site mode and, change it again or understand information, save the binding site definition file, all that, or reset it and do it again, like I showed you earlier. But right now, I've loaded my protein, binding site has already been defined. I'm just going to go to docking mode. It is that easy, 2 steps, and you can reach docking mode and do your docking. So here, when you're doing virtual screening, you can paste your molecules. Like you can click on load molecules, and whichever molecules you have, if you have like 10 files, you can click load them here. If you have smiles annotations from your document, if you have like 10, 15 or 20 smiles, you can just come here, paste them, control V here, or drag and drop, and they will be present. So that is what you can do for virtual screening. But for right now, I'm just going to go with this ligand for convenience, and I want to finish this fast. So adding to docking mode. So now that ligand has been prepared, now the preparation of the ligand is happening. The hydrogen bond network is calculated, then the binding affinity is calculated, and clash properties. So all that will be calculated, and your ligand will be added to your workstation. So now the ligand has been added. Now to do docking, here are some parameters I have. So post generation parameter. The option can range from either generate only one post or generate up to 500 posts. Now that depends on what you are looking for. If you have multiple ligands here, you can choose according to that. But right now I want only for a few posts. And you can set your clash tolerance also. And you can also define a pharmacophore. If you know, okay, I'll just show that later. It'll make more sense then. So I'm just hiding that. And I'm going to click on, yeah. So this is my protein. I'm going to click on, so this is standard docking. Okay, you can do standard docking, template docking, or covalent docking. I'm going to go for standard docking. So standard docking is basically your general docking, where you take your ligand, you cut it into different pieces or fragments, and you sort of fit those fragments together in different orientations within the binding pocket to see which of them has better affinity, energy, etc. And template docking is a little different. Okay, so consider you know that a certain ligand A has interactions, and you want to find other proteins with similar interactions. That depends on the pharmacophore, right, or the properties of the ligand that cause certain activity. So according to that, you can do template docking. So it will find, so you won't get the same result. You will find different molecules that may not look like they have the same structure, but they have the same sort of pharmacophore or same properties that can lead to similar interactions. Okay, so that is template docking. And finally, for covalent docking, generally it takes what? You have to define an R group within your ligand and an R group within the protein. That can be done using the molecular editing function and the protein editing function. So once that is done, R group is defined, you can go ahead with covalent docking. And covalent docking, I suggest that you do standard docking beforehand so that you know where interactions are. If I know it interacts with a certain serine, and the amino acid involved in that interaction belongs to, it is connected to a nitrogen. No, sorry, the hydrogen involved in that binding to the amino acid is connected to a hydrogen. And I can choose that hydrogen in my ligand as the R group and that amino acid as my R group in the protein, and go ahead with covalent docking, right? So that is what you can do regarding docking. And here I've got my result for 10 molecules within a minute. So if I want more molecules, I can just increase the number. CSAR is very fast. So regardless of the number of molecules you want to test or the number of poses you want to generate, everything happens very quickly. Now, generally, what do? You click on the ligand, and let's just look at the binding pocket, right? So this is the binding pocket. Let me visualize the ligand. Why am I not able to see it? Okay, so that is my binding pocket. Okay. I should be able to see my ligands here. Yeah. So you can see the ligand, how the ligand is present within the pocket. You can see it moving around, right? Let me just move this a little. Zoom in. And you can see how each of these ligands is present in different parts. This is present more towards the middle. This is present more towards the side. And within the same part itself, different orientations. So that is how the ligand attaches itself to the binding pocket. Okay. And let's just do one thing. Let's just calculate the properties. Like now you don't know which interactions are there, and interactions are very important to find, how good your docking is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here, check all, and I'm going to calculate hydrogen bond network, torsion quality, clashes, everything. So first I'm going to calculate estimated affinity. And for estimated affinity, earlier I had shown you in the presentation those green spheres or coronas, right? So that's what we are going to look at now. And right now that is getting calculated. So since this ligand is a little big, it will take some time because the software generally has to find the energy contribution of each atom and then sort of give you a verdict, right, or a final binding energy result. So that is what is happening right now. It might take maybe another minute or so, maybe less than a minute. Yeah, it's getting over fast. We'll just wait for that. Okay. We have less than 10 minutes left. So I'll just fast forward to some of the other regions. Now, this is your binding pocket, and you can see the hide coronas. Okay. So let me just hide these. You can see how your ligand is present. Uh, and you can see that there are, some of this orientation is not very good. You can see that some of the coronas are red, they're not green. So estimated affinity is also low for most of these poses when compared to the initial pose, right? So lots of parameters. You can do maybe another round of generation. Now let's look at the hydrogen bond network. Calculate hydrogen bond network, and then calculate torsion quality. Okay, clashes. Okay, so in the table, you can see that, some of these molecules don't have great torsion. Some of them have horrible torsion, horrible clashes. Lots of things are going wrong. Now, how do you choose the best out of these? Let me just uncheck all and visualize my amino acids. So now you can see the interactions, right? You can see the hydrogen bonds. So this is a hydrogen bond. If I want to measure the length, I can come here, click on show label. But before that, if I want to find out which amino acid this is, so this is lysine. It is present in the 60th position, I think. And this is oxygen. And I think it is bound to a sulfur. It is SO2 and it is present in this particular ligand. And this is the hidden energy. I want to see interacting partners. These are the interacting partners. This is another tryptophan that is interacting with this molecule. Okay. And if I want to see the length of this hydrogen bond, what I'm going to do is show atom distance. So the distance between those atoms will basically tell you the bond length, right? So here you have 2.3 angstrom. If I want to measure angles or torsions, I can do it here. Like if I click on three molecules, sorry, no, for angle, if I click on three molecules, I click on three, I can measure the angle. So lots of things you can do for analyzing. And if I want to know what this has a red corona, right? So if I want to know that, let me just come here, clear all labels, show label. So here I can see the binding energy is positive. That is never good. You always need negative binding energy. So you can just compare these. This oxygen has a good binding. It is negative 4.4, whereas this carbon has bad binding. It is positive 6.2. So these are things that you can look for each individual atom, not just the complete protein, but for each individual atom. And let me just clear that. So that is something you can do. And then if you want, you can edit your molecule. You can go to move this molecule to the molecular editor mode. And here you can choose an atom and maybe edit it. So right now, let me just choose this carbon right here. So if I want, I can add an atom to it, a single bonded carbon. So I've added an atom. Next, I can maybe change the charge, or if I want to change the torsion for a bond, I can click on that bond and I'm just gonna twist it around to change the torsion. So you'll be able to see how it is affecting the clashes and all. If I click on visualization, torsion coloring, clashes, so you can see how, as I move this bond around, uh, how the clashes change, right? More clashes, fewer clashes. Yeah. So these are ways you can edit your molecule. But if you cannot do any of that, you can come to Inspirator. Let me just add my molecule to the Inspirator. And for the changes you made, you can save your edited molecule here. Right now, I'm not saving it. Going back to docking mode, and I can add my molecule to the Inspirator. So this will take, for the Inspirator to come up with new molecules, will take some time. So I'll just show you what you can do and then I'll load another file. So basically I can click on this region, maybe say this region or this region. and say, I want to delete this part. And then you can do core replacement. Here you can see core replacement. Or if I click on just this, I can say here I want to do fragment growing. Yeah, so these are things you can do. And right now I'm just gonna let me just save project 1D WD, and I'm going to load another project. I'm going to load this one. We have 3 more minutes left, so I hope I can finish before that. So basically, in the Inspirator, after you give those instructions and run it, this is what will happen. This is a different molecule, so don't get confused. Um, add to Inspirator, add to binding site, add to Inspirator. Okay, so let me just sorry zoom out. So this is my ligand, okay? This slightly different ligand, it is a smaller ligand. Now, if I look at these other molecules, I can see, my initial ligand look like this. That is a purple color is the initial ligand. It has been, let me just set it as reference. So now this purple in color, right? So when I look at it, like you can see my purple ligand ends here, but the new fragment that the protein that the software has suggested, it is like this. And you can look at other structures also. Here it has a ring, my ligand ended here, so yeah, you can see the changes. And for each of these you can do docking again, you can do editing again, whatever you want to do you can do. Okay, so that is Inspirator mode. And finally you have protein editor mode. Now you can bring your protein to this mode. So you basically have to go to protein mode and click add to protein editor mode. Okay, and your protein will be added here. And here what you do is you can click on any amino acid, and you can add atoms, change element, bond, all that you can change. Only if if the valency is all satisfied, you can do it. But apart from that, another important function is you can search for similar binding sites in the PDB. Say you are doing a conservation study, you want to know which other proteins have similar binding sites, you can do this. Now, solutions you can set from 10 to 100, 1 to 100. I'm going to set 7, and you can search. But here I've already done the search, that's why I have the results. So maybe your protein, there are already 10 entries of it for human, and you want to see if it is present in mouse. So maybe you'll have to extend your search to 50 molecules or 20 molecules, right? So that's how you can do that particular option. Now let's just set this as a reference. Just reference. So it's purple in color now. And so when I look at other molecules, so you can see how, this particular domain binding site, it coincides with the binding site on the other molecule also. That is why you can see an overlap between green and purple. And if I want to see just the binding site at the bottom, you can see how the binding sites are different also. Now you can see which residues are different and which are similar. So let's just look at another protein. So this protein also has multiple chains, but if you look at only the binding site, you can see over here serine, threonine. So that is different. Alanine is same. After that, here you have threonine, tryptophan, alanine, and the length of the chains are also different. So you can use these for your analyses, right? So that's basically about it. I had to rush a little, but if you want to explore any of these, a detailed video and licenses for the software will be provided to you, and you can use that for your further studies. So if anyone
Ma'am, your voice is not audible, ma'am. Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, ma. I think, ma'am. Has lost some connectivity issue, I think so.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm extremely sorry. I lost my
Ah,
internet
that's okay, ma'am.
connectivity.
Ah, yes, ma'am. Network issue. Oh, yes, ma'am.
So again, if there are any questions, please feel free to ask them regarding the license or
Ma'am,
regarding
that
any.
was Subiksha. Subiksha, you can ask questions from chat box, ma.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, there's a question from Rajalakshmi. From blast results, should we select proteins based on query coverage or percentage identity, ma'am?
Okay, so query coverage is something you have to decide. Okay, let me just show it to you visually. Let's present my screen again. How to use modified ligand in CSAR. So after you modify it in the inspirator or the molecular editor mode, you have an option. Let me just show it. So let me, I'll just answer that question and come back to the earlier question. So I'm going to my molecular editor mode. Okay, I can save my, so I can save one of this, the, I think, yeah, the second ligand, that is something I created later. Okay, and if I want to use that in my molecular editor mode or my any mode, protein mode, whatever that be. Sorry, these are getting created because I edited my laptop a little, change the drivers. But yeah, the second molecule, that is what my edited molecule is, right? Now what I can do is, if I want to do docking with it, I can add it to docking mode. Or if I want something from my inspirator, I want to choose the third molecule, let's say. So here I have the option add to docking mode. And once I add it to docking mode, I can come, so let me just go down. So it's right here. This is the edited molecule. I can just use that for docking again, standard docking, delete the others and use that for standard docking. So that's something I can do. And now come to the last question regarding, a query length, what to choose. So let me just show you the, like, this protein, this is the whole protein, right? And we know, like, by this conservation study, that this particular purple or the yellow chain, that is the chain that is involved in the react in their binding. So when you're doing docking, you don't need to have all those chains. You only need to have this chain. So query cover means if five chains, um, four chains, and this particular chain of 5% of the query. Then query cover, if you're looking for only a particular domain, you will need only 25%. But 25% does not even mean that. Maybe 25% means one of these other domains or other chains. So you have to check. Let me just go back to that picture. No, that one. So you have to check which part of your molecule. I can show you that. Yeah, so you can check, like, from, amino acid number, right? And which, from here, let me just show you, either from CSAR or from here, you can see which amino acids are involved in which pocket. All that you can see, which domain they are involved in. Just, you basically, from the sequence you can understand. And once you have found which length you like, from where, maybe my domain that I want from E to this domain. So all of but if my domain was the binding pocket, if it was 240 to 320, only these three chains, these three results I can choose. So query cover depends on what you're ideally looking for, what your ultimate objective is. Now going back to the questions, how to use modify and voice not audible. Can you just tell? Oh yeah, that is when my internet got disconnected. I know how to get pathway. From RAS results, should we select proteins based on query coverage or percent identity? Yeah, that is answered. Then how to get pathways. So again, that you can use KEGG. So basically, you can come here, search for your molecule, and these are the pathways that you get, right? Where is that? Yeah. So these are the pathways. Now, if you click on any of these molecules, it will take you to many different pathways. You can see how that molecule is involved in so many pathways. So right now I'm just going to go for P53 signaling pathway. So this is a place where you can get pathways instead of, so there are many options, right? Genomic information, you can go to gene. For pathway information, you can go to pathway. And this pathway is taking some time to load, but basically, like you saw this pathway, you will be led to multiple other pathways. You can see this is a much bigger pathway. You can see many interacting partners, BAX that I mentioned earlier, then P10, which is also a common tumor suppressing gene. So all these you can see different pathways can take you to. Next question. Yeah. So I guess that's it about the questions. Yeah, modified ligand. I
Devika
must have
ma'am,
answered
can
the
you?
question. Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Please ask.
Ma'am, can you come on video mode for a screenshot?
Oh, yeah, yeah, sure. Let me just turn on my video. Stop my presentation.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
hope I'm
Thank you,
able to.
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for the session.
Thank you so much. Again, if you have any doubts, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. My name is Devika Binoy. And if you want to email, if you want to find more information about the software, you can email devika at zasrain.com and someone will get back to you. So thank you so much for being present here, listening to my session, asking questions. Just I hope you will be able to use the software in your own projects and assignments. And thank you so much. Hope you have a great weekend. Bye.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the enlightening session and spending your valuable time with us. Now, I'd like to welcome Ms. G. Shobha, ma'am, Organizing Secretary, NWMMD 2022, to present on the topic Drug Likeness Prediction. Over to you, ma'am.
Yes. Subiksha, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Screen visible or come on?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So let me start my session. Good morning, everyone. My topic is drug likeliness prediction. So yesterday we saw how to retrieve the compound data from PubChem and drug likeliness. I mean, how to get data from PubChem and how to draw the structures using ChemSketch. So now let me go in deep into how to predict the properties. So based on the properties, we can refine the compounds. The term drug likeliness, it is a concept that was used in drug design, whether the substance will have the drug likeliness property. Mainly, we deal with the bioavailability. The term bioavailability, it is nothing but how much of amount of drug that reach the particular protein or particular target. So usually we screen the compounds mainly by these drug likeness properties, Lipinski rule of five, based upon the hydrophilic groups and molecular weight hydrophobicity. So what were all the parameters? Usually we try to evaluate or check for the drug likeliness property. That is the thing we are going to see with this presentation today. So before going into uh, parameters, let me give a brief introduction about this ADME parameters, that is the pharmacokinetics of any drug molecule. Pharmacokinetics nothing but ADME parameters, that is when when the medicine was given, so how it gets absorbed in the saliva, or how it gets absorbed in the intestine, later how it get distributed. So distribution will happens through the transporters protein or transporter protein, or some proteins might involve in the distribution of these drugs to the particular target organism. Then it will go to the liver for the metabolism, and finally after the metabolism it should reach the target. Then it should get the drug after the metabolism with the products and all the substrate whatever it was converted, it should get excreted. So these properties were important to check whether the whatever chemical molecule, so these chemical molecule, all these properties we could calculate using the in silico mode also. So that is the thing we are going to see today. And uh, what bioavailability is. Bioavailability, it is referred to the rate of active moiety, that is a drug or a metabolite that enters the circulation and thereby accessing the site of action. So suppose we are giving 500 milligram of we are taking 500 mg of medicine, a milligram of medicine. Suppose about 25 milligram reaches the target, that is the bioavailability value of that particular drug. So how much amount of target that go and bound with your particular protein. Next is the bioavailability. It is of a drug is largely determined by the properties of the dosage, from which depend partly on its drug design and manufacture. So next, this is your intestine, from where your drug moiety get absorbed into the transported to the circulation. And if it has poor bioavailability, it won't reach target. If it has enhanced bioavailability, it will reach the target. So I think everyone could see this picture where you can see more amount of drug molecule enters into the target target cells, or target organ, whatever it is. So there was a difference between pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. Pharmacokinetics is how drug get metabolized in the body, and pharmacodynamics is how the affinity and efficacy of drug, that is our body response to the drug. So once the drug was administered, it get absorbed and distributed, and it has to be metabolized and eliminated. This part, when we study about this particular thing from a patient, this study is called as pharmacokinetic. But when you study about which proteins were involved in the transfer of particular drug, that is a transporter protein, and next which molecule it bound, affinity, so that particular target protein, so that is your affinity, how to study how this particular drug bound to which particular molecular target or a protein. That part is called as your affinity. Next is your mechanism of drug action. So once the drug bound, it should inhibit the action of that particular target, or it should regulate that particular protein. So that part is mechanism of action. Next, how that drug responds to the particular target, so that defines your efficacy of your drug. So if it inhibit the action of particular if it down regulate the target, downregulate the activity of particular protein, then it means your drug was working. So that shows your efficacy of your drugs. So this is your pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic parameters of a general pharmacokinetic and dynamic study. So for any drug, even an animal study or a clinical trial study, these studies would be carried out to completely understand the drug metabolism. Next is your ADME properties. As I told you, this ADME properties, so which organ involves in this particular transportation, all those things. So the drugs could be administered either orally or intravenous. So if it was absorbed orally, if it was given orally, any drug, so it will go to the gastrointestinal tract for the metabolism, and gastrointestinal metabolism may take place. Then it will pass through the liver, or go to the plasma protein will carry the drug and it will transport it to the liver, where the phase 1 metabolism and phase 2 metabolism will taking in the liver will happen, and after which after the metabolism, once the drug reaches the target and if it modifies, all those things happens, then it has to be excreted. So the excretion can be done through biliary excretion, intestinal excretion, and renal excretion. So I'm just giving few points about all these parameters since it was an important drug. Like these points were very important. How this drug should get absorbed, metabolized, and excreted. So I'm giving few points about each of these parameters. The absorption, it is a process where the drug enters the bloodstream and it will go to the intestine, and based upon the route of administration, the absorption process may vary. The drug is administered intravenously. The absorption is skipped as the drug immediately enters the circulation. So you know very well, when the drug gets injected, the action will be immediately immediate response would be there than when you take it as a medicine. Next, the absorption typically involves the transverse membrane throughout the process. So it may takes place via the passive transport by the proteins called as drug transporters. So informatically, we calculate some of the parameters called topological polar surface area, which was related to the absorption parameters. So many online tools will calculate this TPSA value. So this value have a direct impact on the absorption parameter. So if this value is greater than 140 Armstrong, then the drug would be less absorbed. If it is lesser value, the drug would be easily absorbed. Next is this absorption data will helpful in determining the potential for how much drug reaches the bloodstream after the oral administration. And next one is drug distribution. So distribution is how this drug has to be carried out throughout the body. So very little amount of drug contacts the receptor at any given time. So you know very well, we take any concentration, the small amount of drug only it will reach the target, other will get metabolized. Most of the drugs in the areas removed from the site of the action. So the some proteins or some tissues that involved in the distributions are plasma binding sites, muscle tissue, adipose tissue, it will carry the protein, liver, kidney. So all these are the organs or tissues that involved in the site of action for the drug distribution. So volume of distribution, it is again an important term. How this apparent volume of distribution of the drugs behave in a single. So this volume of the drug depends upon the dose administered versus the plasma concentration. So how this drug get distributed, if you want to find that value, you have to check the dose administered and you will check the plasma, how much drug was present in the plasma. Based on that, you can find how much of drug distributed in your body. And next is your metabolism. Metabolism is liver is we all know any drug, the liver is a primary site of organ metabolism. So if you take more medicine, the liver gets more injured or more, it will go for more metabolic activity. So most of the reaction will happens in the liver. So most of the drugs are inactivated by the metabolism. Some drugs may be activated by the inactive compounds, that is we call them as prodrugs, and other may give the active metabolites from the active compound. So the metabolism usually occurs by microsomal or a non-microsomal enzyme. So microsomal enzymes are nothing but monooxygenase, cytochrome P450, glucuronil transferase, and other enzymes were called as non-microsomal enzymes that are not subjected to these kind of reaction. So usually we target these kind of enzymes. So these are the cytochrome P450 family is huge. Most of the liver enzymes have these kind of enzymes where it involved in the phase 1 metabolism. So in liver, you have two different types of enzymes and two different types of reaction happens in the liver once you take up a medicine. The phase 1 in this reaction, the functional group get attached to the drug molecule. After the phase 1 reaction, the drug become water soluble or a lipid soluble. So phase 1 usually this oxidation reduction reaction will take place, whereas in phase 2 some of the conjugation chemical reactions. So chemists will know about this phase. General reactions and conjugation reactions. So general reactions are nothing but oxidation and reduction, all these processes. Whereas conjugation reaction or something called as glucuronidation, sulfation, all those things will come under conjugation reaction. So in the reaction, the main purpose of these type of reaction is to make your drug a water soluble or a lipid soluble. So these kind of reaction will take place in the liver. So that is the process called as metabolism. So these metabolic reactions are was non-synthetic and synthetic. So phase 1 functional group get attached with the drug molecule, whereas in phase 2 the conjugate is attached to the drug molecule. Whereas in phase 1 the drug may become water soluble or lipid soluble, whereas in the phase 2 reaction mostly it was water soluble. So usually oxidation, reduction, hydrolysis, cyclization, decyclization, all these processes will come under phase 1 reaction, whereas glucuronidation, sulfation, acetylation and conjugation reaction will come under the phase 2 metabolic reaction. So last one is your excretion process. So whatever drug we take, it should get metabolized and it should act in a particular target, after which it should get excreted. So the excretion of drug is also it is so important. So glomerular filtration depends upon the plasma binding and renal blood flow. It depends upon your lipid solubility because some substance may cross the fenestrated glomerular membrane. So it was completely excretion metabolism where the drug should be leave our body in a correct way. So this has we can measure these parameters by the renal outflow, which we can in bioinformatics we have few tools to measure these parameters. So excretion parameters we can measure that also. So next comes your kinetics of elimination. So the rate of elimination of is the amount of drug eliminated per unit of time. And if it is seen as a function of a plasma concentration, we derive an important parameter called clearance. So clearance parameter is also important for the rate of elimination of drug divided by its plasma concentration. So the clearance value will be calculated from these parameters. So these are all the ADME parameters, whatever we have seen till. So now we are moving into an important parameters. So usually when we go for any chemical databases, we can see these parameters most commonly, that is hydrogen bond donor, hydrogen bond acceptor, and molecular weight, partition coefficient. So these are all the important physiochemical parameters that was like before your, if you want to screen any drug molecule, we need to look at these parameters. First one is your, so this is called, usually this we called as Lipinski rule of 5. Why we call them as Lipinski rule of 5 is all the parameters were divisible of 5. So the molecular weight should be less than 500. If the molecular weight, if it is more, then the drug would absorption rate would decrease. If it was very small, then also it should actually it should be between 200 to 500. That would be very good if the molecular weight of the drug based upon the chemical structure we could determine. So if the structure was very big, the molecular weight would be very more based upon the atoms. And next is your log p value. If you have a log p value greater than 5, then your drug would be very lipophilic. Whereas if it was more towards 1, then your drug would be hydrophilic. So that is the difference. So if it was more the value of log p, so we define that log p value should be less than 5. So then it would be hydrophilic in nature. So if it is more, it would be lipid soluble. And next important parameter is hydrogen bond donor and acceptor. So usually the acceptor count should be less than 10 and donor count should be less than 5. And next important parameter is your rotatable bond, where it determines your flexibility of your compound. So your compound should be flexible enough to bind with the particular target or a protein. So for that, rotatable bond is important, but it is also has some limitation. It should be less than 10. And next important parameter, as I told you, polar surface area, which was important to determine the absorption parameter of your drug. That value should be less than 140. If it is more than 140, the absorption rate would decrease. So just what hydrogen bond donor and acceptor is, usually the hydrogen bond donor, the some atoms that participate in the hydrogen bond donor and acceptor is nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen and fluorine. So the nitrogen atoms, usually we call them as hydrogen bond acceptor because it accepts the atom accepting the hydrogen from the atom, oxygen atom. So here you can see the HOH, it was H will donate the hydrogen bond, whereas hydrogen bond acceptor N will accept the atom from the hydrogen bond. So this is how the hydrogen bond would be formed, and this donor and acceptor count should not exceed the limit. If it was more, also there would be a problem. So it should be limited to 5 and 10. So it should be below 5 and below 10. Next comes your log P value. So log P value, as I told you, it is the octanol water partition coefficient. This value, if it was greater, then in the compound would be fat like soluble in fat like solvents. If it was less, then it would be water soluble. The value of log P is less, then it was water soluble. If the value of log P is more, then it would be fat soluble. Next important parameter is molecular polar surface area parameter. So this parameter is important parameter to predict the absorption of drug. This parameter is a combined surface belonging to the oxygen and nitrogen atom and hydrogen atom bound to the electronegative atom. So based upon these parameter, this value would be calculated. So this polar surface area is a good descriptor. So descriptor is nothing but a physiochemical parameter to characterize the drug absorption, including intestinal absorption. So you can calculate these kind of parameters from the polar surface area. That is absorption parameter, bioavailability of any compound, and calcium CO2 permeability and blood-brain barrier permeability. So all these values can be calculated from this parameter. Next one is your rotatable bond. As I told you, rotatable bond will give the compound a molecular flexibility. It has shown to be a very good descriptor for oral bioavailability of the drug. And rotatable bond is defined as a single non-ring bound to a non-determined heavy atom, non-hydrogen atom. So that is your rotatable bond. Usually it is between C and N and are not considered because they have high rotational energy barrier. So usually this rotatable bond is your non-ring bond. So here you can see this with C and C. Here there was one line. So this bond is termed as rotatable bond. So theory part was over. So coming back to the tools. So the mole inspiration tool used to calculate the molecular properties, polar surface area. So what were all the properties this tool can predict? So the input for this tool is your SMILES format, whatever we saw yesterday. So it will calculate and give you the log P value, polar surface area value, donor accepted count, and the volume, and all the parameters, that is basic ADME parameters. It will calculate and give you rotatable bond also. It will calculate, and it will also calculate the bioactivity score. That is GPCR, ligand, kinase inhibitor, ion channel modulators, and nuclear receptors. So this is the home page of this mole inspiration tool. We can this is the link for mole inspiration tool. You can open the page and you can paste your SMILES over here. So I'll just show you practically also. So you can paste the SMILES and click on to calculate property. Once you click, you will get these parameters. So as I told you, it will calculate the log P value, MI log P, that this value should be less than 5, and TPSA, I told you it should be less than 140, and N atoms, atoms depending upon your atom count, this value might vary, and molecular weight should be less than 500. First one is your acceptor atom, it should be less than 10. Next one is your donor atom, it should be less than 5. N violation, if you have any violation in the Lipinski rule, suppose if my log P value goes around 6, then it will show 1 violation. If my molecular weight goes beyond 500, then there would be 2 violations. So based upon the property, like if you give larger the compound, then this value might, N violation will be more. So mostly when we define any drug, we define with these parameters, because if we have around 100 compound, we need to screen that compound. So we'll check for these basic parameters, like whether it obeys Lipinski rule or not. So we'll check and we refine a compound. And next is your rotatable bond. So as I told you, rotatable bond, it will give the flexibility to the compound. So here one rotatable bond and here one rotatable bond. And next is your volume. So based upon the volume, the compound absorption may decrease. So the more the volume, the absorption might decrease. And next important parameter is your calculation of the bioactivity score. So this also we can do it with mole inspiration tool. It is purely based upon your chemical structure, whether this compound will have these particular inhibitor activity. So we spoke about GPCR, ion channel protein, kinase protein, nuclear receptor protein. If actually somewhere in -10, somewhere 0.2, if the value was about 0.2, 0.20, that is if the value was more than 0.20, then it was shown that it was a mild kinase inhibitor. If the value was about 0.40, then it would be shown in dark green color. If it doesn't have the, like, based upon the chemical nature, if this particular tool, if it doesn't show any activity, then it will be in the minus value or below 0.20. Then it means this particular chemical structure, chemically speaking, this structure doesn't have the inhibitor activity of this particular inhibitors. So here you can see this particular compound have a mild inhibitor activity against kinase inhibitor, enzyme inhibitor and nuclear receptor inhibitor. So this could be predicted using the bioactivity score from mole inspiration tool. One more tool we are going to work today is PKCSM, where I have already told what ADME properties are. So it will calculate and give you the ADME parameters of any drug. So here you have to paste the smile and click on to the ADMET. Once you done with that, it will calculate and give you all the parameters related to absorption, distribution, metabolism and excretion. I'll just show this also practically. The molecule description. So here you have molecule and here you have molecular weight, log P value, donor count, rotatable bond count, acceptor count and surface area, and absorption parameters such as water solubility, calcium, CaCO2 permeability, intestinal absorption and distribution parameters, how it was distributed, volume of distribution and fraction of unbound, whether the compound was permeable towards blood-brain barrier, and CNS permeability is central nervous system permeability, and metabolism, whether it was metabolized using any of these substrate in the liver, and finally excretion parameter, total clearance rate and renal OCT substrate rate. And apart from that, it will also calculate and give you the toxicological parameters, whether Ames test, you know very well, it will predict the mutagenicity. If it is yes, it was mutagenic. If it was no, it was not mutagenic. And similarly, these are all the LD50 tests. These are all the usually some wet lab techniques you would have carried out with these parameters, like LD50 and all. We will calculate usually in the wet lab based upon the chemical nature. They predicted a algorithm to define whether this particular drug is. It will predict some value, whether it was oral toxicity or LD50, lethal dosage 50 value could be calculated, and hepatotox, whether it was hepatotoxic or not, whether it was skin sensitive, cause any skin sensitization, it has any sensitivity towards the skin. So all those parameters could be calculated using these ADME PKCSM server tool. So I'll just show you practically how to work with these tools. First, let me go with. So any doubt in the presentation? Let me start the practical session. Okay, so let me go with the practical session. The first one is, I'll go with mole inspiration first. So I require an input file as a smiles format. So I'm going to PubChem and I'll take any one compound from PubChem, maybe curcumin. So I'll take the smiles format from here. I'll copy the smiles format and I'll paste the smiles. So I'll just go slowly so that if possible you can also do So let me paste the smiles format in the box. They have provided over here. Enter smiles format. So right click and paste. And if you click on to the calculate property, so it was just a simple one. You have to paste the smiles format in the box provided here. And if you click calculate property, it will calculate all the property related to this MI log P, TPSA, atom count, molecular weight, um, NON, NOH. So that is your accepted count and donor count, and you have zero violation, and you have rotatable bond of 8 and volume of 332. So it will, if you just give the smiles format, whatever smiles format you give, based upon it will take the structure and it will calculate these parameters and give you. So I have explained you what parameters are there. So I'm not going deep here. If I click predict bioactivity, so in that image I have shown you some green color, but here it doesn't show any green color because all the values here was uh, below 0.20. So if it was above 0.20 only, this particular tool will show whether it has this particular activity or not. So in this study you can't justify whether it has this activity or not, but you can test it with the docking simulation whether it has any of these activity. So theoretically, it doesn't show this activity. So am I clear? So this was a very simple tool. So in many publication, you could have seen these tables, usual ADME properties. They would have put it up. So they would have done for 10 to 50 compounds, and they would have tabled all the results. Similarly, if you click predict bioactivity, you will get these value. So more the compound, you have more. You can go for more. You put a table like GPCR, like on ion channel modulator. So when you go and do for 10 to 50 compounds, you will get more positive results for those compounds. So am I clear? Any doubts in this tool?
No doubts, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So now let me move on to PKCSM. Uh, Here also the input was same, your smiles format. So let me take quercetin or isohamilton. So I'll take this particular structure for the as example. So I'm pasting here. Once you log into this particular screen, you have PKCSM over here. You have to click on to that option. You can paste the smiles over here, and you have to give I'm not a robot, you have to check into this option, and you can click on to the ADMET parameter. So uh, actually once you click that, it will be running, after which it will take few minutes to give the value of each parameter. The descriptors here, whatever I have given here, the descriptors are usually molecular weight. I have already told you the molecular weight should be less than 500, and your log P value should be less than 5, and rotatable bond count should be less than 10, and acceptor count 10, donor count 5, surface area should be less than 140. So here it started calculating the water solubility value. So you know from the term water soluble means there was if the drug was water soluble, it means it was easily absorbed. So here it will give you the logarithmic value of water soluble parameter. So all the interpretation value, I'll just tell you how to interpret all these value. I'll just show you how. I'll just show the theory part for that. And next important parameter is CO2 permeability. That is, this particular parameter is your human epithelial colorectal adenocarcinoma cells. So this type of cells were widely distributed in vitro model to study the intestinal mucosal absorption or oral administration of drugs. So this parameter is important to study the absorption. So if this particular value, if it is greater than 0.90, then it means it was more absorbable. The high CO2 permeability it would be there if this value is greater than 9.90. And next important parameter is intestinal absorption. So intestinal is absorption is nothing but when you take a drug, usually it get absorbed via the intestine. So this particular value, if it was less than 30%, it considered as poorly absorbed. So if the more the value, it means the drug will get more absorbed in the intestine. Next important parameter is your skin permeability value. So it is actually some you may try for skin related medicine. In that case, this parameter is important. So the skin permeability value is considered for many consumer product efficacy for the transdermal delivery of your particular drug. So if this value, if it was greater than minus 2.5, greater than minus 2.5, this value will have low skin permeability. So these are all the some of the absorption parameters, whether it get absorbed through the glycoprotein 1 or a glycoprotein 2. So these are all the some of the absorption parameters. So these are all the binding proteins, whether this particular drug will get absorbed or not. So next important parameter is your VD, that is your volume of distribution. If this value is more, the drug will get more distributed in the tissue than in the plasma. So the VD value is low if it is below 0.71, 0.7. If it was the value was below 0.71, the distribution value is very low. If it was above 2.61, then your distribution was very high. So if it was intermediate, then it was having some intermediate distribution into a body. Next one is your fraction unbound human. This parameter, it was important to calculate the plasma bounding protein or a serum proteins, how your drug bound to a serum protein. This parameters is important. And next important parameter, whether your drug will cross the blood brain barrier parameter. So if it cross the BBB is nothing but blood brain barrier. This value, if the value is greater than 0.3, then it was called as it will cross the blood brain barrier. Suppose if you're targeting for a neuro disease, then it should cross that blood brain barrier to reach the nervous system cell. Other drugs should not, other drugs when we target for some other disease, then it should not reach it should not cross the CNS system or a blood brain barrier. So we have to, that parameter is also very much important. And next one is here, I have told you about this liver metabolizing enzymes, where it plays an important role in metabolism. Whether this drug will have a binding affinity towards these liver enzymes or not. Some will have a binding affinity towards the liver enzyme, some will not have the binding affinity towards. So it is not necessary all the drugs you are taking should be an inhibitor of cytochrome family. So some have different roles, so it doesn't have the interaction towards it, whether these enzymes metabolize these particular drugs or not. Next important parameter is excretion parameter, where you have a total clearance rate. So total clearance rate is nothing but a drug will have the CL is CL TOT is nothing but CL is clearance, TOT is nothing but total. So this value, actually this is a combination of hepatic clearance, that is the metabolism of liver or a biliary. So it will clear completely. And next important one is renal OCT transporter. OCT is nothing but organic cation transporter. So this ion plays an important role in drug elimination. This particular protein plays an important role in drug elimination. So this is one of the important parameter to identify the mechanism of elimination of your drug from the body. And last parameter is your toxicological parameters. So each one has significant. So whether Ames test, it determines your mutagenicity of your compound. Usually this is your bacterial toxicity test. For bacterial toxicity test, we use this Ames test. And next one is RD50, that is lethal dosage value, LD50 value, which used to standard measurement of acute toxicity of your different drug molecule. So this was actually predicted, already there was a predicted model where they have screened 10,000 compound to fix this particular value. So whether it is, if it is toxic, it has certain range. If it is not toxic, it has certain range. And these are all hepatotoxicity, skin sensitization, T. piriformis toxicity. These are all the additional toxicological parameters. Based upon which study we are carrying out, we can take any of these few parameters for the publication. So the complete theoretical part, how to interpret these results, you can check over here in the theory part. So the CO2 permeability, it has certain range. Here you can see, if you click next, each and every parameters, you can check how to interpret each and every parameter. So if you have any doubts, you can clarify here. Any doubts, participants? You can post your doubts if you have any queries related to these parameters. So one have asked, what, ma'am, if there was certain range. If the greater the value, the solubility will decrease. So if it was minus value, then your solubility might be more. I think here you can check for the parameter water solubility. So they have mentioned it as water solubility reflects the solubility of waters in the molecule. Lipid soluble drugs are very well absorbed than the water soluble. So based upon this value, logarithmic value. So whether if it was negative, then it was water soluble. If it is more the value, then it was not water soluble. Am I clear? Any doubts?
Oh, it's clear, ma'am.
Okay. Um, Rajita ma'am asked something. Rajita ma'am have asked for some question. One second. No, it can be used for not only synthesized ligand, any compound. If we have, I have told to draw the structure. So you can also using if you don't have your compound in PubChem, in that case you can go for drawing the structure, and from the drawn structure you can predict the Smiles format. Using that Smile format, you can predict these properties. So not only it was not restricted to only synthesized already existing compound. You can go for any kind of compound for checking these properties. Any other doubts, participants? Any queries? No. So am I clear? Any doubts?
No more doubts.
Okay, thank you. Suriksha, okay, one more query happening. One second. How to predict Smiles format. So yesterday I have told to draw the structure from ChemSketch. So from ChemSketch, you have an option. I've told you to using Smiles. We have drawn the structure. No? From same option when you use, you can get the Smiles from the drawn structure. If possible, I'll show you that in the next session. Or let me.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so we'll wind up this session. We'll go for another 15 minutes break followed by next session. Subiksha?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for this valuable session. Now let's have a small break and join the session again by 11:35 p.m. a.m.